Hi, I've talked about prayer, and prayer is the bridge whereby the resources of heaven, the resources of God can be rolled across into our world. And
Yeah.
we're just doing a little simple video here because one of our most impacting prayers arrived in our lives in a very different way.
Yeah.
So my first prayer, if you like, and do listen to our stories, because me and John were very, very reluctant converts to Christianity. I mean, we tried almost every other way first. So if you're kind of, I'm not sure, then listen to our story, because we really get that, because we've absolutely been there. But I got to the point, and we call this Beauty for Ashes finding faith in a time of crisis.
Yeah.
And one thing I've noticed about crisis is that all these highfalutin kind of intellectual, or worries about what it might mean, that all gets a little bit more distilled, and suddenly it becomes about, if there's anything there that can help me, I need help.
Yeah, I mean, there's an old saying that there's no atheists on the battlefield, and you can understand why,
Yeah, and I suppose, we're doing a lot of this in coronavirus, and I think that what we've always assumed is a safe world, and that we know how it's going to turn, and what we're going to be doing, that was blasted apart, in about a week.
Absolutely.
And people have been looking around thinking, I'm not so sure I feel secure in this world anymore.
Yeah.
And certainly for me, my first prayer was at a time when I had really drawn the conclusion I was not so secure. I'd taken a lot of dope, a lot of acid, that's LSD, and done my brain in, and I was in an absolute mess. And I knew I needed help. And so for me, the prayer was that I prayed was a very simple prayer, really. If you can help me and make a better job of my life than I've done up to now, please will you come? And it's always been hard to explain to people what it's like to go into a prayer, not knowing what's going on, feeling really desperate, and come out of a prayer and knowing something's happened. But that's literally what it was like for me.
Yeah.
I knew something had arrived. I now know someone had arrived, and it really did change. And even the fact that the Christians at college, who I really scorned because they represented everything I didn't want, even my attitude to them had changed, and I kind of unpack that more fully later. So for me, that prayer completely changed my life.
Yeah.
Okay. Now I know that there was a prayer.
Yeah, it was very different for me, and but I think that's the beauty of God. Is there isn't a formula. You pray this, that happens, and then this is the outcome. It's not like that. The beauty is that He meets us where we are. He meets us in sort of John shape and Lou shape. Because it's a relationship. Rather than, as I say, than as a formula. Because I always thought it was a formula before. And for me, I found myself, I had been in a psychiatric hospital for my alcoholism and drug addiction, and I was told I had brain damage, I had liver damage, and I had 6 months to live. And so I was desperately trying to not drink, and I was going to Alcoholics Anonymous, and I'd been to lots and lots of meetings, and I just didn't know how to not drink. And I found myself at home by myself, and my head screaming. I wanted to drink. I'd been at 3 meetings that day listening to people talk about the horrors of alcohol, and I still wanted a drink. People had talked to me about, the power of prayer. They talked to me about the steps in Alcoholics Anonymous, a spiritual program, that you give your will and your life over to the care of God. And I thought, I'm not so sure about that. But it was desperation. And in desperation, I said, I'll try anything at all. And I said a very, very simple prayer. But it's probably one of the most fervent prayers I have ever said. And it was just, God, help me. And I waited, and as I've said often, I was waiting for a sign. Nothing dramatic, choir of angels, that would have done fine. The sort of clouds opening up. This is my beloved son. All of that, that would do me fine. What did I get? Nothing. And that's what I thought. And I get into bed and I slept. Slept like a baby, actually, you know. Got up the next day and I was talking to somebody and I said, nothing happened. Nothing happened, you know. And they said, have you had a drink? And I said, no. Do you feel like a drink? And I went, no. And from that day till now, which is over 30 years, I've never felt like a drink.
So the craving
had gone.
just went.
Had gone. But I didn't even recognise it. It was like a stealth prayer, that one, you know. And maybe that's what I needed. You know, the Lord obviously looked at me and said, that's what he needs. He needs something quiet, unassuming,
But it was
powerful.
yeah, absolutely.
And that's the thing, there was a huge power involved in that, because all my life I'd suffered this craving. Now all of a sudden, gone. Didn't even recognise it.
So absolute miracle.
Oh, absolutely. And, you know, it's regardless of how sceptical, how agnostic I had been before, I have to look at that and go, well, I prayed, that went, you know, even I couldn't, I couldn't deny it. I had to say, yeah, it worked.
So in that prayer, God took something out.
Yes.
In my prayer, he kind of arrived. But both of those were ways in which God entered into our lives.
Yeah.
And so we just wanted to say these two simple but very, very different ways in which prayer made a difference, and a huge, huge difference.
These are life-changing prayers. You know, they weren't sort of, you know, small things that were happening to us. These were life-changing. You know, it allowed me to have a life, that one. You know, and you the same.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah,
and again, we're going to be talking about this and unpacking it more, because this section is "Can God help me?" And the answer, well, I mean, that prayer, I became a Christian, and it literally changed my life. And I've been a Christian well over 3 or 4 decades now. No, 4 decades now. And God is more real to me now than he was at that moment. And God became more and more real to you as you built on the knowledge that something is happening.
I still had this sort of fairly distant God, you know, for a long time. And, you know, and it wasn't until much, much later I had a much more personal God. You know, I mean, I'm looking back on it now and I'm saying that's how God was sort of treating me. But that's only hindsight. At the time, I didn't realise that, you know, but much later it became a very personal God.
And we're going to do a video about that, because it's really interesting at that point, because we met at the point where my God was very personal. To me, he was Father, and to God, to John, he was real, but not personal, was he?
No, I had more of a Santa Claus God. You know, you send off letters and things arrive. That's you know, and that's as much involvement as I wanted in my life of God at that particular point in time.
So we're going to do a video about that. So do come and hear more of the story. And thank you for listening.
Yeah.
Bye-bye.
Bye.